Hi there, this is Cyril. Welcome to this new episode of Let's Try to Practice Rick Beato's quick lesson. So again, we will listen to Rick Beato's last quick lesson. He talks about minor scale and a minor chord. And so I brought my keyboard, I brought the guitar, I've prepared some diagrams and scales so that we can practice and understand. So if you're excited, remember to subscribe to the channel, that will support me. And of course, grab your guitar, take your time, and if you have a keyboard or if you even have a virtual keyboard, just use it to understand everything. So first we should listen to Rick Beato.
Quick lesson. When practicing improvising on minor chords, work on using the natural six and the flat six. I like the flat six for that melancholy sound.
Let's have a look at the scale Rick is using. He talks about the minor scale, and actually it doesn't explain which chord he's using, but it's a C minor. So let's grab the guitar. So looking at the position of his hand, we can see that it's the bar chord of the C minor, this one. So to have a better look, we can look at the fretboard. So here is the C minor scale. Let's highlight the C minor chord right there. Rick is playing here on the 8th fret, right? Let's have a closer look to the C minor scale. So these are the notes on the fretboard, starting from C, and here's the regular piano keyboard. So I strongly suggest you to have either a keyboard or even a virtual keyboard just to have a look, because there the notes are clearly displayed. For example, from C to C here, if we play just the white notes, we have the regular major scale, okay? It's much easier to play the regular C major scale on the piano than, of course, on the guitar. On the guitar, you have to remember this strange shape. For the minor scale, something that is that we can remember is that the minor scale is close to the major scale, but you have some changes. First, the third, instead of being a natural third, so 1, 2, 3, right? You flat the third. And you see it's much more melancholic already. Basically, on the major scale, you were on a nice family road trip, everything was just fine. But there, you turn to minor, you have an engine alarm or a baby crying on the back seat, and everything's a problem, okay? Flat third, then same note, and then a change. Instead of having a normal natural sixth, we have a flat sixth. In that case, it's a G sharp or A flat, right? So half step below A or half step above G. Okay, so that's the major and the minor. You see the sixth. And Rick Beato speaks a lot about this sixth note, which gives a lot of melancholy to the minor scale. And if we have a look at the chord he plays the C minor right there. So we can choose the C minor here on this interactive fretboard, right? I will put the link in the description. It's a very useful thing to study with. So you see, actually you can play this. The notes belonging to the C minor are C, D sharp, and G. So you can play them here, G, C, D sharp, right? Okay. But what Rick does, if you look closely at his hand at the beginning, he adds the sixth, and again the sixth is this one, so G sharp, so this one here. Okay. So, and you see the chord is a bit more complex than the regular minor chord here when you add the sixth. And what Rick suggests is to basically, when improvising on this scale, try to insist on this note, okay? Okay? So let's practice that. I will just build a loop based on the C minor and adding the sixth in the loop, and then we will try to improvise on this box, this position of the C minor. Now, maybe we can remember the pentatonic scale, which contains only 5 notes, which we can see here a very well-known shape. I can display it to you. So this shape here, shape number 1, is very visible here, right? So 8, 11, and then all those position of the notes, right? This one. Okay, but now we can add all the notes of the minor scale. And we will try to insist on the sixth that we have here in this position, or also here. Okay, so let's build the loop. So I will build a loop based on the C minor chord, this one, and from time to time in the loop I will hit the sixth, right? This one, the G sharp. It adds a lot of melancholy. Now be careful, because when I will hit the sixth there with my little finger here, be careful not to leave open the string after that, otherwise you will hit the A sharp, which is a nice note too, but if you play them together, it gives a small dissonance, which can be not really nice. It's not a very big problem, but I think it's better if you just mute the A sharp instead of hearing it, or we keep the whole chord and like this, right? So we keep the C here on the third string. Okay? So let's build the loop. So let's warm up with just some pentatonics, maybe. So the pentatonic shape. Okay, so now that we can improvise, let's have a look at the fretboard while improvising, and also the keyboard, just to connect everything. So let's first start with the pentatonic. So right there, right, from the C here, oops, sorry, right, D sharp, right there. Let's try to remain musical, let's say, so when practicing, it's a really nice thing to have the time to practice. So listen, try to speak. So just being on the pentatonic, so I'm still in this shape of the pentatonic, the shape number 1, right there. And now let's add the other notes of the minor scale. okay? And let's insist on the 6th, so this one. It's a note that brings a lot of melancholy. But you see, when you try to play it, I hope you're practicing right now, when you try to play the 6th, it's a sentence that is not finished. It's just like you're talking and it's not finished. You want to go back to a more secure position. Let's say a note that feels home better, like for example the root, the C. So even if you go from C to the 6th, you go back home, right? But you can go through other notes. Right, you want to go back home. You can also go back home on the 5th. This one, the G. You have a G there also, right there. And if you look well, if you bend the G note here, so you just push the string and you pay attention to the pitch. So the 5th is interesting on the minor scale because it's a secure position, but if just by bending it, you go to the melancholy, to the problem, right? Again, the 5th to the 6th. Okay? So it's a very interesting thing to improvise, and it's a nice thing to have the keyboard not too far because you can really see the intervals and the relationship, right? Right. Okay. Of course, the minor third also is a very characteristic note of the minor scale, right? And it's close to the 2nd that you can also bend. Right? Okay, so here is a good exercise, in my opinion, to practice over. Just trying to sound a bit like Rick Beato during his quick lesson. Okay, let's do the same exercise, but not only with the minor scale, but maybe with other modes of the major scale. So maybe you've heard of the modes, maybe it's a bit confusing to you, sometimes it's a bit confusing to me too. But the exercise I'd like to show you might make the things crystal clear. At least I hope it did to me. So again, this is the C minor scale, right? And here's the C minor with the minor third, a flat 6 and a flat 7, okay? Now, the modes of the major scale are sets of notes that are arranged from the notes of the major scale. So let's have a little diagram here, which I really like. I hope you can see it. It's also a way to remember them all. There's a little trick. So you have all the modes named here, Ionian. So the C Ionian is the C major scale, and you see, of course, that all the notes we are playing usually of the major scale, right? And so the Ionian is the most basic mode of the major scale. But you can also play the notes of the major scale starting not from the C, but from the D, okay? So let's listen to that. Doesn't make much difference, but let's have a pedal note just to understand what's going on. So let's play the C as a pedal note, right? And so if you keep the C and play the note of the major scale, you are on a nice journey, everything's just fine, the car doesn't have any problem, kids are sleeping on the backseat, right? Okay, so that's the very basic mode. Now, if we want to play the D Dorian, then the D Dorian, we always keep the white keys, right? But now it's D Dorian, so the root note, the most important note, is no longer C, but it's D. And let's listen to that. You see here, we retrieve the melancholy of a minor third. Why do we have a minor third again? Because we're starting from D, okay? And so we have 1, 2, and this is not 3 because you don't have a black note in between, so this is just a half step instead of a full step, right? The major third is right there. But here, if we start from D, we also have this minorish sound, right? But we don't have the exact same note as the minor, right? The Dorian is also has a bit of melancholy, but it's a bit more bright, in my opinion. Then you have all the other modes that you can try to hear like this. You go to E, the Phrygian, so it's almost a war that is going on, right? You're preparing for a battle or something. Suspenseful, you know. Then you have the Lydian, so you start from F, right? Right, so this is a major mode too, because you have a major third, 1, 2, 3. So it's almost as joyful as the major Ionian, the Ionian mode of the major scale, right? It's almost the same. Actually, it almost has the same note, you see. The same, I would say, intervallic pattern, okay? And so on. I will not go through all the modes, but something I really suggest is to hear and practice them, just to hear the sound. And of course, you have this little trick to remember it. I really like this trick. If Dora plays like me, all's lost. So E for Ionian, Dora Dorian plays Phrygian, and so on. Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. Aeolian is the minor mode. It's the exact minor scale we've been playing before, but on C. Look what happens if we play the A again as the pedal note and play all the white keys. You see you have a minor third again, right? It's not a major, it's a minor third. Okay, so another way to listen to the modes is you just play some random pattern on the white keys. Something like this, and then you change the root note. And that's very interesting because, for example, from C, and instead of going from C, D, E, you jump, for example. So now we're in the Dorian. Let's go to the Lydian, which is joyful. On F. Let's go back to a minor one. Very sad. Let's go back to the battle, for example, on Phrygian. Oh, sorry, I'm on the Dorian. Sorry about that. Here's the Phrygian. Okay, and so on. So how do we apply that to the guitar? Okay, because we don't have keys on the guitar, we have a fretboard. So let's go back to the fretboard right there. And maybe we can ask to, let's play with the first mode, the Dorian. Okay, so here is the C Dorian, and let's compare it to the C minor, right? You see that the pattern is almost the same. For example, look at fret number 8. You have the same pattern. You have all the columns of notes here on the minor mode, but also on the Dorian mode. But there's a slight difference here. We have A sharp, D, and D sharp, whereas on the C minor we don't have the A. Instead we have a G sharp. Okay, so there is this change, and this is the only note change you have between Dorian and minor, right? Look at there, you see the G sharp becomes an A, and so on when you go to Dorian. So let's keep at first maybe with a box we know well now, the shape 1 of the pentatonic, right? But in Dorian now we have those notes, right? Right, D sharp. Right, so. Right. Okay. Right. Okay, that's on the Dorian. And so we can practice also. You see that you can also play a C minor chord on the Dorian, right? It goes well. You have all the notes, but you cannot anymore use the 6 because the 6 doesn't belong to the Dorian. So if you want to sound Dorian, you have to avoid this note. Of course, the minor sounds really nice, but if you want to experiment those different sounds, then you avoid the 6 and you keep with, and maybe instead of hitting this flat 6, you can hit the natural 6. So the A. So maybe here. Okay. Actually this note right there is quite famous, and I really love this note because it's a sound you hear a lot. For example, in David Gilmour's playing, I'm sure you have heard this already in some Pink Floyd songs, right? So those two notes here, and this is really Dorian, because if you're on this minor chord. Okay, so now we can practice the Dorian sound. Again, we can build a little loop and you can play along. So, for example, I will base my loop again on the C minor. And I will try to include in my loop this very note here, the A. Right? So. So we have a Dorian loop in C, and so. And so let's try to have the A, the natural A sound a bit, right? So we want to bend a bit this A. So you have also the open A here, but if we bend this A, we end up on A sharp, and it's a nice note to land on. And we can play with the shape 1 here, but we can also play with the shape 5 right there. See, with this column of note, right? Shape 5 again is this one, right? So you have the column of notes. It's those same notes actually, and this little hat here. Call it as you want, and you can add those notes in this shape to sound Dorian, right? So shape 1 and shape 5. So I can add those notes. Again, I can bend the A to the A sharp. Another piece of advice, of course, try to play having those call and response things, right? Okay, but you can also try to play with larger intervals. A problem we have, and I also have, is to play the notes one right after the other on the scale, right? It's better to try to jump a bit more. You see? Right? That gives a bit more sense, and it's a bit closer when someone's singing actually, because when someone is singing is not necessarily singing notes that are next to each other in a scale. Usually you have jumps to add some intensities to the singing, right? Okay, so now I'd like to reveal my ultimate trick for the modes. It's something I have realized really recently. I'm a bit ashamed, but the problem is that I've never took any lesson, and I should have, and I think I will soon. But actually it was quite fun to discover it by myself. I will give it to you, and I'm sure many of you will say, oh man, how could you play guitars for so long without knowing that? But something very interesting is when we compare, and I will show you how I have discovered that. Okay, let's have a look. So look at this shape here of the C Dorian, okay? And we compared it to the C minor just before, okay? And we just said that there are just one difference, one note, the A, that becomes the G sharp in the C minor, from Dorian to C minor. But also, what you can notice is that the actual shape, this entire sequence of notes is exactly the same. It's just shifted, translated on the fretboard. For example, look into Dorian. Here you have those two columns of notes here, from 8 to 10, okay? Well, if you look at the C minor, we also have these two columns of notes, but not here, in the 13th and the 15th fret, and also on the first and the third. Actually, from the 12th fret, we know that the fretboard repeats itself, okay? And if we look closer, for example, let's see, we have those two columns, and there, here in the center, we have two notes, and then we have 1 and 3, okay? Let's have a look at Dorian here. Okay, two notes, 1 and 3, it's the same shape. It's just translated. So how do we know how much it is translated? How can we guess it, and how can we have it under our fingers? Well, first you can just have a look and say, okay, from 8 to, from C Dorian to C minor. So let's say the C is on the 8th fret, so this column is on the 8th fret, but in the minor scale, it's on the 1st. So you have to move from 8th fret to 1st fret, and then the thing repeats. Okay, but it's a bit hard to understand. There's a more clever way, and that's why I've put the keyboard on it, okay? Let's have a look again at this diagram. We know that the Dorian is the second mode of the scale, and it starts on the second note of the scale. So in the C major scale, the second note is D, and then we are Dorian. If we just play all the notes from D to D, having D as a pedal note. Okay, so basically our C Dorian corresponds to the major scale of not C, but of the note before. You know, if we have D Dorian corresponding to C Ionian, then C Dorian corresponds to B sharp, B flat, sorry, right? Because from D to C, you have one step, right? So from D to C, you have one step, so you have two half step, right? And so from C to the two steps below, two half steps below, so one full step, sorry, one whole step, and this is B flat, all right? So the notes of the C, all the notes of the C Dorian corresponds to the B flat major, and that's interesting. If we try to play the B flat major, so B flat, okay, starting from B flat. Oh, you don't see it, sorry. B flat here. B flat, okay? Now, if I pedal B flat, so that's the major scale, so we're in B flat Ionian. But now if I take the C as the root, I will end up with the Dorian sound. So let's take the C as the root. Alright, so I have this Dorian sound again. So basically, if I compare the C Dorian, all those notes should be the same as the B flat major. Let's check it out. So we go to the B flat, so it's A sharp major, and let's compare the two diagrams. You see, fret 8, fret 10, we have the columns. Again, same thing. So that's quite interesting, right? So we know that C Dorian is A sharp or B flat, okay, major. So that's interesting, because if you know the pattern of the major scale or of the minor scale, you know all the patterns of all the modes just by thinking of which mode I am and to what major scale it corresponds. For example, if I want to play Phrygian on C, I have to go back 2 full steps from C, right, to know which major scale it is. I hope that makes sense. If it's not clear, don't hesitate to listen to my stuff again. I think it's understandable, I hope. Leave me in the comment if it's not clear. But and another trick then, because I don't know very well the major scale, I know better the minor scale. So for that, you know that from a major scale corresponds to a relative minor scale, and for that you can use the circular fifth, right? So circular fifth, for example, the B flat here corresponds to G minor. So B flat major corresponds to G minor scale, okay? So let's just check it out. We will ask the G minor, and we can compare again to the C Dorian, you see, exact same note. Now, of course, it's the same sequence of notes, but remember that to hear a mode, you have to have the pedal note or the root note of the major scale to have the sound of the mode, okay? So we have realized that the notes from A sharp major, G minor or C Dorian are the same, those notes. Now, if as a pedal note we keep the C, we're in C Dorian. But if we change the pedal note, for example, to A sharp, we're in the major scale, so the Ionian mode of A sharp. And if we change our pedal note to the G, we're in the minor sound of G. So a cool, I'd say, practicing exercise is to play a sequence of notes, so this sequence of notes, and change the pedal note to go from Dorian to Ionian to Aeolian mode. So that's cool, I think. So from C, so we're in Dorian. Let's go to major. How do we translate this modal exercise on the guitar? Well, on the guitar, with the looper, it's quite easy because you can just loop the change of root notes. So, for example, C, and then A sharp, and then G. And then if you keep with the C Dorian scale, you will hear the Dorian, and then the Ionian, and then the Aeolian mode. Okay? Let's do that. Okay, so we have the C, and then the A sharp, and then the G. So this is a super exercise because as the progression goes on, you hear the modes, and you are also attracted to the root note of each mode, right? Because if you play just the same pattern all the time, it's nice, right? But well, maybe it's not nice, but I find it nice. And then within the box, you will automatically learn the notes that are interesting. For example, this one feels home right there. It was the G. Of course, it was the root note of the G minor scale. But now we're on the A sharp. This one feels better. and then we're back on the G. Now I'm home on C, A sharp, C, A sharp, G. Right, so don't hesitate to practice along, try to improvise and try from each change of root note to hear the modes and try to land on the right notes don't try to go too fast, just take the time to listen, just take the time. This D sharp is nice. You see, the G is also nice when we hear the C, because it's the fifth of the C. And it's a home note too, as we mentioned at the beginning, right? Right? I think it's a great exercise because I still have a lot to learn playing this exercise, because as the progression goes on, I can hear the intervals and I can try to aim some sound. And for example, the G sound, it's the fifth of the C Dorian, so it feels home also in the C and of course also in the G minor, because there it's the root note. The A sharp is there. Now it feels home. And you can try very slow things, maybe just by following the progression. So C, for example. Thank you very much for watching this video till the end. I'm really impressed. Don't hesitate to come back and practice again with the modes and with the loop. And don't hesitate if you have any comments, any questions, suggestions, or maybe corrections. Remember to subscribe and share the video. Thank you very much. Goodbye.